don't care if you yourself don't want to talk about this stuff. I don't care. You do you, I will do me. But all I ask is that you stay out of my way when I am doing me. And just know that I am not sorry, I did nothing wrong, and I will do it again. Goodbye. Hello, everyone.
Oh. This is a disgusting video.
Hey everyone. So before we kind of start the segment, I want to address an argument that we kept seeing in the comments for the other Shoe0nHead video. So there is this bizarre argument that Shoe0nHead's fans are doing, and I can't tell if it's because of her recent video and her lying in it, or if it's due to just them being poor at argumentation, but essentially the argument breaks down to this. Why are you trying to connect the Balenciaga thing to LGBT stuff? These people are clearly, fill in word, and they clearly are bad, and this is just you guys overreacting and trying to be mean to Shoe, blah, blah, blah. This is a red herring argument. No one made the argument that the Balenciaga thing had anything to do with the LGBT. What was said, specifically, was that even though the Balenciaga photo shoot seemed a bit sussy, and it did, I'm not arguing that, but based on all evidence that's come in now, it sounds like someone within Balenciaga had a really fucking sussy idea for a type of shoot, and the photographer was just kind of told to go in and paid exceedingly large amounts of money and then got thrown under the bus as the scapegoat. It's really weird because they keep doing this thing where they think we're connected to that. The reason why people are mad at Shoe0nHead is that Shoe0nHead sees pedophilia everywhere.
Yep.
And tends to see this in a lot of places, including in describing kink as groomers. She was very big into the kink at Pride discourse. She's also been kind of on the right side as far as framing LGBT people as groomers. And so the problem is when she goes around pedo-jacketing all sorts of things, or basically fighting ghosts about situations that, while maybe sussy, aren't necessarily issues of direct child harm, what ends up happening is it brings up that litany of issues that she's done again. So this argument, this idea that you guys have, I'm going to say that if I see those comments, we're just going to keep deleting them, because if you didn't watch this portion, then you aren't going to listen to the rest of these arguments. You're just going to turn off your brain because your 31-year-old adult woman that you are standing, who acts like a 17-year-old, said that people were mean to her. And then decided to double down like KFC. So that's where we're at right now. So again, I want to be clear. The Balenciaga thing has nothing to do with the LGBT. That is a red herring argument. It is to bring up the fact that every single time anything happens that Shoe doesn't like, she immediately jumps to pedophilia, and she's done this against LGBT people in the past. The Balenciaga thing was literally her just basically starting a conspiracy theory off what was essentially a sussy photo shoot. Should Balenciaga be critiqued for it? Yeah. Should they be condemned for it? Sure. But this idea that itself is somehow related to real child harm is kind of weird. Because the problem is when you start these conspiracy theories, what you essentially do is buy into sort of the same stuff that QAnon does. And we know for a fact, and I know Merrick's covered this, I think Xander Hall might have said it, but I know for a fact Merrick has. The fact of the matter is that real organizations that deal with child safety and, human trafficking are being screwed over by people in QAnon, because these people see pedophiles everywhere. They report this stuff. And then these institutions have to then go around and try to investigate them, which waste resources and time where they could be helping very real children. Not just going around chasing red herring after red herring because people can't stop seeing this stuff. So, again, couple things in chat I want to respond to.
What do we got so far?
Let's see. We got Wait, she's talking about the Balenciaga thing. I hardly find that surprising. As a mother, Balenciaga can go to hell. I don't believe in. Yeah, Alicia, I'm just going to say that like that's a reactionary statement and doesn't actually have an argument contained in it. That's just a reaction. Xavier said that leftist people were mean to her. She panders so hard to the right. Why would they ever get mean with her? I mean, that's true. The right basically demonstrably engages in much more like child endangerment. And the simple fact of the matter is that like, yet they frame us as groomers. And she panders to the right hard. Yeah, the whole conspiracy theory was vibes-based. She didn't give any argument. That's true, fake name. Absolutely true. Let's see here. It doesn't help that a lot of her followers keep pulling out wood chippers, which is a thinly veiled reference to the F slur. Yeah, it's a pile of sticks. It is just, if you go through her Twitter, a lot of the responses from right-leaning people, people that are blazing red on Shinigami Eye, a lot of these people are saying a lot of transphobic and just generally homophobic stuff. Like, we didn't connect this to LGBT stuff. They did. Because their side of things decided to frame us as groomers. Mm-hmm. Yep. Our doggo is dreaming. So I wish most people realize harm conspiracy and not just as crazy people. I agree, Marianne. I agree.
Absolutely.
Marianne, that's absolutely 100%. Just watched Zan's coverage of Shoe this morning. Yeah, and that's why we're not going to be going over Shoe's video, because I don't care. I've skimmed through it. My basic take is that there's a lot of stuff she's either misframing intentionally, or she just doesn't understand other people's arguments. Like, it's either ignorance or it's malice. What I'm interested in is the outcome of this. I think Zan does a great job tearing apart her lies, does a 2-hour video on it. I honestly think that is probably going to be your best bet as far as ways to deal with this.
Well, and Jess and I are aware that a lot of times we are not the only video that people watch on the subject either,
Yeah, so I highly recommend Zan's video because it probably goes into much more detail than I plan on going to. We're going to be talking about this from a different angle. The angle that we want to talk about after we kind of see what's been going on Twitter is, I think we want to talk about this from a perspective of rehabilitative justice, because these are the types of situations that are difficult. And so trying to analyze that and come up with the best arguments possible is a pretty good exercise, because we're dealing with somebody who, by all rights, has basically said that they don't see the problem with what they did. How do you rehabilitate someone like that? So let's explore. Zan was attacked by an actual groomer while he was still friends with Shoe, and she knew about it. She didn't quote tweet that guy. His political affiliation was all right. Yeah, no, the problem is that Shoe got mad because former friends of hers decided to call her out and then sent her 500,000 followers to harass them, got Xander Hall basically sussed for 12 hours, which screwed up a plan they were doing with a hashtag to help trans people. But also, someone said something as abhorrent to Merrick as, and again, trigger warning for the worst thing ever, and also child sexual abuse, said to her something to the effect of that she apparently enjoyed being as a kid. Because she pointed out that the two pictures, the picture one of the Supreme Court ruling about CP and the picture of the kid with the little bondage bear thing, these were two separate shoots. They had nothing to do with each other. She constructed the narrative they were connected. Again, Vosh went over this in detail. The reality is that these two shoots were not connected. She constructed a narrative to basically frame it as such. Scout says, as someone who has done research into the abuse of the Catholic Church and the Boy Scouts, I hate seeing QAnon and Shoe just casually throwing around pedophilia accusations around. No, agreed.
Well, and this is something that when we were talking about it the other night, like, child abuse happens in, like, mundane places. It's not just this, like, big, huge, fantastical story with heroes in it or anything.
No, the thing is that it's actually
QAnon gets stuck in too, is the fantasy.
Well, the fantasy that there are these big heroes and these are these incredibly extraordinary situations. And the reality, the thing about like sexual assault and childhood abuse is that the reason why they're absolutely horrific is because they're so banal. They exist in the world. We know that, like, what was it, like there was that statistic that kept getting pushed around by the alt-right, where they were getting mad because, like, it was like what Joe Biden or Obama said back in the day, that 1 in 3 girls who go to college are sexually assaulted. Like,
Yeah. Well, and there's even another statistic that shows most people already know their abuser.
Yeah. Also, someone brought up a really good point. Yeah, most people know their abuser. It's not like the person jumps out of the bushes. It's not like it's going to be some massive company. It's, the banality of evil. Andrew Kohler's right. But yeah, fake name brings up a good point. And I believe Merrick also pointed out that the Supreme Court case, made it easier to prosecute. So yeah, it was a good thing.
And we're talking about paperwork
that just was thrown in there to look like a document.
Yeah. Was in this photo shoot. Yeah, that's all that was in there. So,
in fact, my guess would be is they were trying to, like, go the opposite direction to kind of deal with some of the blowback, and then Shoe0nHead decided to project. Like, I don't have another description. In terms of violence statistics, Lady Raincloud put the rain statistics in chat. Can you put those in site chat too? So let's look at what's going on.
RAIN's one of the well-known organizations, by the way. Are not Lady Rain herself, but RAIN.
She's not a well-known organization.
I forget exactly what RAIN stands for, but it's something national. I want to say it's one of the national institutes that deals with.
I think it's rape and assault.
Yeah.
I think it's something that, yeah. Well, I can look at it in a minute. But I want to check this out just to see kind of what the arguments are and what's been trending on Twitter. Let's go. Joke here. It's kind of impossible to cancel me in general because I have 4 different fan bases and they all hate each other and me. I don't know if this is a fan of hers or not, but it is pretty funny. This gentleman, why are progressives so adamant about making the rejection of pedophilia a right-wing thing? This kind of stuff is why people are leaving their party. No one's leaving their party. First off, they just, like, literally liberals just won the 2022 election. Also, no one is trying to make it a right-wing thing. What they're doing is trying to separate the notion of sexual abuse from LGBT people. All right, this person asks, I follow her on Twitter. I only see her pop up to shit on wokeness, and I see her fans being openly anti-LGBT and reactionary. I'm confused as to why people defend her so hard. Good question. Hunter S. Thompson for sheriff. Scholastic terrorism. I nearly fell off the couch laughing. Nicely done. Yeah. So the idea that this is just a lie. I don't know what Stu's saying here. Let's take a look.
Implying I can't talk about it, or I'm committing scholastic terrorism, or whatever the new buzzword is. That is defending this.
It is not defending this. Shu, that's actually a really piss-poor argument. Also, please get a better mic. Please get a better mic.
Scholastic isn't the right word either.
No. It's not scholastic terrorism. It's
Satastic. Sorry, it gets really weird to try and say these things once somebody gets the wrong pronunciation.
It's stochastic.
Yeah.
Stochastic terrorism. Yeah, she's an idiot. So the thing is that stochastic terrorism is basically when you essentially point people towards acts of violence without ever saying the quiet part out loud. You basically point them in that direction. A good example of this would be, say, like, what is it, Lauren Southern? When her pushing, essentially pointing to the Great Replacement, and then people in her name go do violence.
Didn't we do a video with this on Rowling?
We talked about Rowling. Rowling's act, stochastic terrorism of J.K. Rowling is essentially her constant focus on trans people, instead of making shitty books, as essentially caused her probably to do a huge amount of harm to. Yeah, actually, J.K. Rowling is probably doing scholastic terrorism.
That might work, yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, this is, so when you point this stuff at there and say these people are groomers, and you've already been sort of pointing to the whole, like, LGBT people are groomers thing, and on top of it, that's one of the major things in discourse, people are going to make connections in their heads. When you say things on timeline like these people should be roadblocked or, Minecrafted, what you're essentially saying is anyone who's been accused of this. Now, again, I believe in, as does Zena, innocent until proven guilty. These people do not. They are reactionaries who want to engage in harm. And so the problem is, by pointing in that direction, they don't have to do shit. Reactionaries can just point in the general direction, say that these people should pay or stop. And yeah, it's a big deal. And by the way, one of the reasons why this became such a big fucking deal is the Q Club shooting happened. And guess what happened? A bunch of 5 queer people died because of this bullshit involving this whole groomer crap they keep throwing at trans people and doctors who are actively engaging in gender affirming goddamn medicine. Basically, all she's doing, this is a really good point from Xavier. You point out a bunch of facts while at the same time not really linking them and letting the audience build their own links. Yeah, it's build their own conclusion. Yeah, it's build your own conclusion. This is her not actually understanding, like, first off, the concept, but also to some degree, not really fully getting what the even conversation's about. Again, her and her fans do not seem to get this. A lot of these accounts are just me when I don't press play on a video I'm crying about. Okay, whatever. Just Shoe0nHead defending Miley Nopis years ago after he was banned for attacking Leslie Jones. The video cuts off at the end where Shoe says that she looks like a, and I'm not going to say that out loud because that's shitty. If you think you're defending Lauren Southern was bad, check out Shoe0nHead and Armored Skeptic defending confirmed white supremacist, an InfoWars employee, Miley Yiannopoulos. Okay, fair thing. We can go to the surfs and keep going down and see some interesting stuff. Shoe's favorite way of dealing with any kind of pushback on the internet. Leaked photo of Shoe0nHead. That's actually pretty funny.
Fair enough.
It's her actively getting the Hitler particles. Everything I don't like is Nazis. After defending Shoe0nHead's tweets about Balenciaga, break my heart. Okay. A lot of the posts here, if you'll notice, are basically pointing out a lot of people defending Shoe with really piss poor argumentation. Like, again, here's another one. Kind of weird that Balenciaga had sad-looking children posing with BDSM gear and also make reference to child porn legal case. Again, these two were not the same photo shoot. And somehow took that to mean that you were attacking the LGBT community. No, it's because right now there is stochastic terrorism going on where people are framing LGBT people as groomers. And when you start talking about this stuff and making bizarre connections that aren't there.
Well, and I think I want to go into a little bit about how those connections could have formed. So maybe you can help me out with some of the arguments too, a little bit that I hear, but right, we dealt with a lot of the Kink at Pride stuff, which is this argument that comes up almost every year, and it's just a big mess, frankly. But seems to have a huge side about protecting children. Should children be around kink? Except kink is so many different things that, like, it's hard to even quantify what people are talking about in these arguments because everybody's got a different idea. And so there's a lot of leaps that people make, like, from that whole protecting children argument to other things, right? And so I think that's how one of the ways that these connections are happening.
So as you can see, there are people clowning on her, and well said, Zena. New York accent, boxy, social democracy, Hitler particles. I'm not sorry, I did nothing wrong, and I'll fucking do it again. Other than the word fucking, that's basically what her video ended with. She is just going to double down and keep doing this because she doesn't actually care about the reality. She just cares about inflicting as much damage on this as humanly possible because she thinks she's doing right. Again, she's kind of pulling that no good deed goes unpunished from the beginning of the stream. I tried to do a good thing and all of you got mad. Why are you booing me? Wait, I didn't actually understand the current environment and understand, like, the fact that these currently there are reactionaries who are looking for reasons to shoot LGBT people, and you're going into this bizarre conspiracy theory you basically got from TikTok and then started putting the pieces together. When in reality, like, the photographer that got thrown under the bus and who got death threats actually was innocent. Oh no. Literally all Shoe has to do is engage in proper framing for this to be a nothing burger, but it seems like Shoe, like the engagement that she gets with these. Yeah. It's attention. When children are spoiled and children are, generally speaking, don't get the attention they need, they will then do things to act out to get some kind of attention. Because some attention, even bad attention, is still better than none. This is why we need to stop demonizing attention, because generally speaking, when people go out into deficit of it, they basically start acting out. Let's see what she says here.
So first of all, if I was going to leave the left over left-wing people being mean to me, I would have left the left like 8 years ago. I know it's hard for these people to
You were never
understand because
in.
their extent of politics is quite literally Discord servers and Reddit communities. You cannot be kicked out of opinions. Like, I could call myself a right-winger right now, but I would be the shittiest right-winger ever, probably on account of the whole, I don't know, socialism thing. The whole being a socialist might get in the way.
I don't know, tankies exist. Like, again, the reality here is that, yeah, you believe in socialism, but again, so did Stalin. Said the same thing. Guess what? He kind of was an awful human being who killed, like, was it 20 million Russians? Like, again, this is the problem, is that you're, like, Shoe's issue is that her espoused political values are not in any way, shape, or form how her behavior comes off. She claims to be a leftist, but then she acts out like a reactionary. The problem is that if I have to choose between inconsistencies between someone's espoused values and their behavior, spoiler, I choose their behavior. Because their behavior is usually more honest. So while she may believe in economic socialism, I don't think she actually understands how justice or ethics works or how to make those arguments. And the thing is, you're right. We can't make you leave the left. The left is sort of a fictional construct we created to aggregate all of these different people who have all these different political values and ideas that are very similar. And so the idea that like anyone can make you leave the left, again, the left is not this monolith. Again, there are people who are ostensibly on the left who are just
reactionaries too?
Well, I mean, they're just tankies. Like, they believe in socialism. They're also authoritarians. Like, this is a non-argument. These are, again, nothing burgers.
Is there anything else?
A couple more things. Okay. Again, Jack Saint called her out, saying you constantly fearmonger about LGBT, groomers, ignoring any good faith criticisms you've ever got, and spread lies about drag events, because remember, she said drag events were grooming, to the point where you directly fuel conservative legislation. Shoe, absolutely fuck yourself with this pandering shit, you baby brain grifter. Yeah, by the way, here's the abridged version of her video.
Just know that I am not sorry, I did nothing wrong, and I will do it again. Goodbye.
Yeah. Also, K-Fesh, hide this photo from Shoe0nHead. It is a photo of a pervert exposing his spiky leather bondage gear to a child. These are the same jokes we made about RGR. They're still good. I'm just saying.
That's true.
So you can understand that right now, Twitter is basically divided into two camps. There are the people that understand these arguments and have condemned Shoe0nHead. There's a third camp, which I think is just Vosh, which is I'm going to keep my friend even though I disagree with her. But, and then there's the group that are basically in bad faith, not really understanding the other side's arguments and just basically trying to frame the left as defending pedophilia, I guess. Which is weird, because no one said that. In fact, what we pointed out was that you've sort of connected these different things that weren't connected and then kind of ran with them, and it's fucking weird. So then we get into the question of rehabilitative justice, and someone asked a really good question above. Can you engage in rehabilitative justice when the person has not actually shown the desire for redemption? That is the $1 million question. Do you have any thoughts before I sound off?
I think you and I are on the same page.
I think we are.
Yeah.
So, and again, please know that these are conversations Zena and I have before stream, so if I say them, it's mostly just because I'm a blowhard. Rehabilitation does not necessarily, in my opinion, require the person to want to rehabilitate. We have people who are in jail who are basically like, one of their requirements is therapy. In the case of people with substance abuse issues, sometimes it's substance abuse therapy. The reality is that sometimes people are put in situations to grow and change that they don't like or didn't want, because sometimes the decisions they made demonstrably show that they're not going to make the right decision. That being said, we have said before that there are people who, in my opinion, can still be met with rehabilitative justice while also kept away from people. The examples of this would be people who are like acting pedophiles, people who engage in wanton murder. To some degree, these people's crimes are so bad that if there's still any concern that these people would be a danger to society, I think those people should get food, water, shelter, healthcare, etc., not just put in a concrete box But the reality is that those people may have to be institutionalized in a way where they are no longer allowed in greater society for the danger they could commit. And that may have to be just assessed on a case-by-case basis by a lot of experts. But in my worldview, or at least the way I think of things in Zena as well, is that to some degree, when you're engaging in this type of stuff, you have to at least argue, how do I put this? If she had come back and said that she had misunderstood the conversation and genuinely, was trying to rethink it, that would be fine. The problem is it still wouldn't redeem the things that have happened in the past because I don't think she's really apologized for those or even understood people's arguments. Again, I don't think she's the brightest. But the thing is that to some degree, I could at least accept that. But we just literally saw the TLDR version of her video, which is, I'll fucking do it again. Shoe0nHead constantly looks for CSA everywhere. And while it is absolutely an abhorrent thing that should absolutely be stamped out, and the ways you do that we talked about in the previous video, which included 1, non-acting pedophiles should receive therapy, and we should destigmatize it so that those people feel more comfortable going to therapy, because the way we stigmatize them now causes them to remain in hiding and thus not get help and thus be more likely to act.
The hope being is that more harm could be prevented by getting these people help much, much sooner.
This is how systemic prejudice works. You are creating a circumstance when you go by Shoe0nHead's worldview that creates more child harm. Full stop. And so the problem is that if you actually want to address these issues, you have to, at some way, think of real responses and real ways to actually engage with them, not just react outwardly and create connections that aren't there. Do I think Balenciaga's sussy? Yeah. But I know for a fact that the photographer had nothing to do with it. And on top of it, I don't even know if corporate had anything to do with it. It seemed like they just sort of reacted. Mixed Sammy Zombie said in chat, when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Exactly. I'm not going to psychoanalyze Shoe. I don't see the point. That seems like a really strong waste of time and also just not a use of my abilities I ever want to do on this stream. But I do think that there's something to be argued here, is that at some point when people act out like this and keep doing so, even when they're proven demonstrably wrong, even when they double down super hard on this, at that point, it does push the bounds of rehabilitative justice. The question then is, what do we do with that? Because at least in my mind, retributive justice is still not acceptable. Because retributive justice doesn't work. It's not because it's bad or because you're being mean. It's because retributive justice doesn't work. It doesn't have people change. They get mad, they get bitter, they get shameful, and then they basically act again. Retributive justice doesn't fix the issue. Dan's Shadow asks, yeah, but it's not easy for those who don't want to. Absolutely. And then there may have to be a question in certain cases, certain crimes, things like that, where unless those people show actual desire to change, then yeah, we may have to keep them institutionalized because they may still be a danger to themselves and others.
And that's just, honestly, to me, that's just one of those, nothing questions or nothing statements, because doing personal work to come back from something, even if something was intentional or not intentional, doesn't really matter. It can be difficult either way to come back from that. I think all of that is just so circumstantial.
Yeah.
Right? There are people who have done things in war that still struggle with the guilt over that or the shame around it, right? And do we necessarily blame them? Maybe not, but are they still struggling through? Yeah, they very well could be. So that's a weird one for me, and just kind of depends. That's really the
and
best
again, it gets into the issue, Deanth, of that of to some degree we get into a question in the idea of rehabilitative justice is there was a thing going around in discourse a while back called morally lucky, and the idea is that some people are born into circumstances where they are just, their morals and their values are constructed to essentially put them in the right position. I was raised by a mother who was a Democrat and who was very clear about why she wasn't a Republican. It's one of the things that she did really well. And as such, I never, even though I had leanings that direction, went down the right-leaning libertarian route or went conservative, because in my 20s, I wasn't particularly great. The fact is that because I had that basis, I never went down that road or never ended up in the alt-right or things like that. I stayed always ostensibly on the left. Granted, my LGBT stuff, say circa 10 years back, wasn't great, but you know what? I'm a trans woman now. I can't make up for that beyond just oops. But the reality is that at some level, when we talk about people who don't want to, in some ways, they may never notice they had the option.
That's
because
where I was going to go too.
Yeah, because of systemic reasons or because they were born into an unlucky situation, there may be ways in which they just don't realize they have an option or that even they're being presented with one. There's a way that our internal framings of the world, the messaging that we received, does sort of cut off options.
Yeah. One example I could think of is if, like, you're a kid with ADHD, you don't know that you have ADHD, and so maybe you did the equivalent of acting out when really you were just, doing the ADHD thing and moving around constantly, right? But then you don't know it. Your parents might have ADHD themselves and still not know it, okay? And then, whoever your teachers are might not know enough to really, like, speak up or say anything or help the student get help properly. So now we have a student growing up throughout the whole system with no idea what's going on, right? No idea that there's a possibility of therapy or medications or anything else like that in order to address this stuff. And so this person's grown up just kind of dealing with shit, and, well, no one gave them the options or let them know that those things even existed in the first place. So how could they really think, oh, I have more choices that I could make? Well, they were making the choices within the bound of what they saw, what they were able to see. And I think some of this stuff with, when we're talking about rehabilitative justice falls into that too, just in other systemic issues as well.
No, absolutely. Apparently, Vosh is streaming right now, and Iconic Behemoth in chat said, wishing everyone the best. Good evening, everyone. Gonna watch Vosh yell at Shoe right now. Huh.
Well, all right. I will have to check.
We'll have to check that out afterwards. I guess my arguments are going to have to be based on before that. But yeah, I mean, I hope he does. I hope she listens to reason because he's usually good at argumentation. And I think that, like, she kind of needs someone who she trusts to kind of point out why she's kind of being an idiot here. The point being is that rehabilitative justice is hard because there are people who don't want to change. And sometimes the reasons they don't want to change are because of systemic reasons or they never knew they had the option. We have to decipher whether that is the case or whether they're actively malicious. My argument here is that Shoe0nHead's a zealot. She sees pedophilia and abuse everywhere. Whether that's because of her own past, I don't know. I don't know if that's just she's just a reactionary and acts the same way that, right-leaning people do towards things. She might just have a very high disgust response and tends to behave similar to the way right-leaning people do. Remember the psychology of prejudice example we've given. So I don't know. But the reality is it doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is that instead of actually coming at this from any attempt to hear people or understand, she doubled down hard. Now, I want to put this in a larger context. Right now, this is happening on Twitter.com, a website that is now owned by Elon Musk, that is now ostensibly being taken over by right-wingers. Tens of thousands of people have left, many of them liberals, and literally one of the trending things right now is woke mind virus, because Elon said that there is literally a woke mind virus. To be woke means to be somehow mentally ill, according to these people, which is weird because that's literally the thing they said 15 years ago about liberals. Liberalism is a mental illness. The problem is that, one, this is not the case, that's not how mental illness works. But on top of that, there's also just a really weird thing here. If I remember correctly, Ron DeSantis's defense in regards to court and one of their it was either the Don't Say Gay bill or another bill, essentially had to define woke as the belief that there are there are systemic injustices in the world and those need to be addressed.
Yeah.
Which, if that's woke, then how is that a mind virus? Like, let's be clear. Elon Musk is just mad because his wife left him for a trans woman and his kid is trans. The trans agenda defeated Elon Musk. No matter how much money he has, we're still hotter. Oh, and they scrapped the Trust and Advisory Board. Yeah, apparently the people that are going around on Twitter that are supposed to prevent pictures of child abuse and things like that from appearing on the site, that got scrapped down to a dude. Also, let's remember that the right are the people that also engage in child marriage, who often see the perfect woman as being a young virgin who is barefoot and pregnant. Also kind of incels who are often very alt-righty, many of them are, also have a tendency to like start talking about, you know, the same thing a lot of right-leaning libertarians do, age of consent, except the incels aren't really worried about consent. They're just worried about the best age to get them. I believe the one I saw back on We Hunted the Mammoth like a year or two ago was like 14, 15, but there was some debate between these people. The right, generally speaking, has always been okay with child harm, except when they can use it to weaponize, to vilify us. They've done this to gay people. They're now doing this to trans people. They'll probably do this to poly people. They'll probably do this to people who are kinky, and that's already happening. Any sexual minority is probably going to, sexual or gender-based minority is probably going to get this thrown at them, because anytime you start to shake up the system in regards to these things, there is a way that someone will immediately yell, someone think of the children, even if the children aren't even being affected. This is the same shit we dealt with RGR. RGR went so far as to call it basically child abuse or grooming if someone's wearing a spaghetti strap top because their partner likes their shoulders. Like, the problem is that we need to acknowledge very clearly that there has to be consequences for when people behave like this. And so this comes down to something that I know Zena and I have been thinking about and talking about for a while, and that is this. Shoe0nHead has said that she refuses to change, that she will do this again, and she will keep doing this. Even if she had been right about the Balenciaga thing, there are enough things in her past where she has attacked and framed LGBT people, including drag queens and the like, as being groomers, pedophiles, and so on. She was one of the people that jumped in during the Kink at Pride discussion, along with RGR, who were vilifying people and acting like Karens. The fact is, real simply, if you're not willing to actually redeem, if you're not willing to actually deal with the consequences of what you did and the negative effects that had, including feeding right-leaning discourse to feed into more potential stochastic terrorism against trans people, guess what? I think at this point, the only option to deal with Shoe0nHead is one, I think people on the left need to ostracize her, and two, I genuinely think for all possibility, if possible, at some point, deplatform her.
Well, and we're at this point particularly because of circumstances as well, right? Like, we're not in a court of law, so any hope of like having, you know, enforced therapy or a path or something laid out for how to do you know, rehabilitation isn't an option, right? And as far as individuals or communities or streamers, we don't have that many choices left to us, especially because if we go down the harassment route, we get back into retributive justice, which is just awful.
Which is cringe.
Which is cringe and doesn't work. Right. And then you end up with also people that are doing harassment. And that's not great either, okay? So, yeah, pulling back from Shoe, not interacting with her, not bringing her on stream, deplatforming her when possible, not accepting, you know, doing events with her, right? Those are all kind of the options that we've got left to us.
Additionally, and I just have to make this abundantly clear, is that to some degree, there's also sort of an elephant in the room that I want to talk about, and that is, again, as I've said before many times, Shoe0nHead has a Twitter account with 500,000 followers.
Yep.
I have never once seen her post in her life telling people to not harass anyone or do anything, and I think I know why. One of the things that really bothers me about Shoe is that for a woman in her 30s, she doesn't really act like it. Now, we can make the same critique about me. I don't really act like a woman in my 40s. Well, I'm immature. That's one. But the other reason is, by the way, Pluvius, thank you so much for the tier 1 sub. But the fact is that in some ways, my acting immature is basically just kind of part of my aesthetic. It's something I do online. But if you ask my friends when I interact with them, I don't really have the same kind of behavior. I also generally kind of enjoy that second puberty aspect of being queer and the ability to really engage with, and hopefully in some ways try to make a balance between kind of redoing or re-experiencing some of my adolescence that I didn't get, while also still behaving like a fully grown woman who has a career. Right? The difference with Shoe is that Shoe is a 31-year-old woman who has a YouTube channel with 1 million subscribers, if memory serves, or more, and 500,000 followers on Twitter, and she has never once told these people to not go harass, to my knowledge, or do anything. She may have in previous times and videos. I don't watch her stuff that often. I don't think I've ever really watched a whole video, to be honest. But the fact is that, like, as far as her Twitter, I've never seen anyone once post this. And I think the reason is that because of the aesthetic she cultivates, which is kind of this 17-year-old, 18, 19-year-old e-girl thing, right? With the Wednesday Adam dresses and the wings and all this other stuff going on with the eyeliner.
What? No, I wasn't trying to.
Oh.
Sorry, that was just me moving.
Kind of to some degree, what ends up happening is that it feels like it's just negligence to cultivate that idea that she's just not responsible. Oh, I'm just saying things on the internet. It doesn't hurt anybody. But it does. It hurts Anderhall. Certainly hurt Merrick. The serfs. Do I need to go on? Hell, we've gotten some reprehensible comments. I just don't save them. I have people read them that aren't attached to the arguments we make, because then they can just make them fuck off and go away. Because I'm not going to read what you wrote. Unless I'm really feeling spicy that day. The fact of the matter is that I think there needs to be a strong discussion about what would happen to deal with this. Now, I see people in chat talking about White Forest. I'm going to be really clear. I am not asking for that because I don't want to put necessarily anyone involved in that situation in any kind of hard place, particularly because we use White Forest, right? If we have...
I mean, Vosh does. Destiny does.
Well, not Destiny. No, this is cloned off of Destiny's original thing. It's just grown since then.
Never mind.
Yeah, so, but Vosh does, Shoe does, we do, the Serfs do. God, Demon Mama does. Do I have to continue? Like Xander Hall does. Everybody uses to some degree. If White Forest decides they want to keep letting her use that, especially because she's one of the major people paying in, that's their business.
So they're also an organization and a co-op with their own rules and principles, and I trust them to deal with that themselves. Just saying. The other thing to keep in mind too is that a lot of people don't realize when we're using different technologies, there are different principles that go into play. All right. Free and open source software. When you hear that, that doesn't mean nothing. Okay. Free could mean monetarily free, but it can also mean free as in other freedoms. Freedom to distribute the source code, for example. This is a really common one. Another potential open source principle that's out there is that anybody can use this. Anybody can use your technology. Doesn't matter what they're using it for. Okay.
Well, within reason, because remember, if I remember correctly, Rose Wrist was kicked off of White Forest for being an absolute douchebag.
I am talking about a principle in general.
Got it.
White Leaf has a co-op organization with it, and so they've got their own rules and principles for how they function and operate. But a lot of people don't realize that when we're releasing software in a general sense in the world, that there's even these principles in the first place. Like a lot of our Linux stuff absolutely gets released under, a lot of these different principles. There's several different license types, several different organizations that have rules about this. And so we do have to look at technology as far as, okay, what do we do in these situations? This is a question that comes up, but, right? China, I think, has its own version of Ubuntu or Linux that works there, but yet we are also happy to use it out here. It's still one of the most popular distros.
Well,
right?
and we want to go a little bit further with it and say that, again, if Shoe is one of the two people that are paying majorly into this, that being Vosh and Shoe, the simple fact of the matter is that Shoe is putting money into a thing that does demonstrable good. If we're going to actually kind of try to weigh and figure out what effect she's having on the world, I'm not saying that necessarily that this redeems her in any way, But the fact that basically the money she's putting in helps people like us or Demon Mama or other streamers be out there and not have to use the Twitch system as much or other systems that basically have really terrible moderation tools. No, that's kind of a good thing. The reason why we don't get as much transphobia and stuff like that is because White Forest's system allows us to have way more control. So again, the issue we get into is that what I'm more talking about in regards to is this pushing this platforming in regards to Twitter and as far as YouTube. I am not going to put that on people using an open source thing. That doesn't really jive with me.
Well, and we're talking more like an overarching, larger social repercussion, right? Like, Shoe in the public eye is particularly more important.
Well, because that's where she's doing harm.
Right. She's not necessarily like... Sometimes we do meet people who are crappy people, like, as individuals, okay? And they're not the nicest, but the work that they do in public is really, really great. Okay? We're not going to, get it backwards and take, like, a personal issue from them and then make it a public thing. That's also cringe. All right? We've seen people do that. And so if the issue is Shoe in the public eye, then yeah, we need to go at the issue from the public eye. That's how we need to talk about it, approach this. It's the concept of consequences being, what's the word? Like, when they're equal to their consequences being equal to like the harm done.
Equivalent?
Yeah. Consequences being equivalent to like what was actually happening or what was actually done. Okay. That I think is a huge one in this. Yeah.
And again, I want to be really clear that other people who are also, benefit from, that system, from the White Forest system and basically, ostensibly have Shoe to thank for paying for part of that. Like, let's be super clear. Like, they're also putting themselves out there. Like, the Serfs clearly are pointing out, the way she framed drag queens as groomers. And again, some of the ways she basically vilifies the LGBT. Xander Hall's out here saying, basically Shoe0nHead made her response to Balenciaga's conspiracy theory drama, and her fans have regated me calling me a pedo, deflecting for her all day. Like, this is stuff that is just, in my opinion, not okay. And at very least, condemning her audience and telling them to knock that crap off would be the bare minimum. But that's not happened. So here's what my thoughts are, and I think Zena would agree with this.
Yeah.
I think the problem we have is that this whole shoes on the left, not on the left thing, I think that's the wrong conversation to be having. I think the question is what does the left mean? To me, being on the left means generally wanting more democratic processes within economics, that is, wanting to change to something as far, as simple as, social democracies, or frankly getting into like actual socialism, so on. It also means that we treat human beings as important, and that to some degree things like food, water, shelter, healthcare, utilities, internet, these things are just looked at as what they are. They're resources that are necessary for human functioning at this point in our history. It also generally means that rehabilitative justice is the direction we go, because we know what happens with retributive. It turns into honor killings and basically just never-ending harm. The problem here is that whether she was on the left or she considers herself left, it doesn't really matter. What matters more is when push comes to shove, when Republicans start pushing us into the mass grave, whose side is she on? Yeah. Where does she stand? Does she stand with the fascists she's taking pictures with? Or does she actively defend us? Does she take back her claims that drag queens are somehow groomers and get over this bizarre trigger she has where everything is apparently pedophilia? To some degree, you have to look at those behaviors and make a judgment for yourself. Can you consider Shoe an ally based on everything I've seen? No. Full stop, no. Does that mean I think you should harass the girl? No. Do I think that this should require, have any of you do anything crappy? No. I just think is that we need to judge people based on their behavior. And her behavior is really shitty. So I think that's about what I have.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess the big point here is just, this is really sad. I love stories where people from the right come onto the left and improve as human beings and start caring about marginalized groups and things. I like those stories. I like redemption stories. They're important to me. So when I see something like this fail, it's kind of genuinely sad. It genuinely bothers me because I have hope that people are going to improve. It's literally my job. My job is literally helping people improve. It's sad this didn't go that way. And obviously, you know, there's always the future and things can change. But right now,
this is what we've got to work with. So.
Yeah. Like, I think what we have to do is look at her behavior, make judgments accordingly, and not ally with individuals who are going to absolutely treat us as monsters. Or stomp their foot like a child saying, I'm going to do it again.
Yeah.
See you in the next one. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Also, consider donating to us. You can support us on our website, transgirltherapist.org. You can also help us on our Patreon, link below, or you can become a member here on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching.